Good afternoon, everybody. Want to welcome everybody to the 2025 Kansas Dairy Sector Update as part of the Kansas Department of Agriculture's Ag Growth Summit. We've got some pretty good speakers coming up here in a few minutes. We're going to cover a couple different topics, very timely, very relevant. So after each speaker is done with their presentation, there will be a time for Q&A. So feel free at any point in time during that section to either unmute your phone or you can type things into the chat box. I'll keep an eye on that and would be more than happy to relay those questions on your behalf. With that, I will go ahead and introduce our first guest speaker, Dr. Sarah McReynolds, part of the Animal Health Department here at the Kansas Department of Agriculture. And she's going to give us an update on silo testing. So, Dr. McReynolds, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jake, for that introduction. And so, like Jay said, I'm going to start off by just giving an update on the National Milk Testing Program that was done with the dairy industry in Kansas. Next slide. Perfect. So I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but last December, USDA did issue a federal order in regards to highly pathogenic avian influenza in milk within our livestock industry. And the federal order that went into place required that all states develop a plan that would work for that state to start doing surveillance and testing to try to figure out where in the dairy industry and where we were still finding highly pathogenic avian influenza. So as you hopefully recall, last March, we did have cases within the state of Kansas in our dairy industry, and other states did it as well. And as that continued to spread across the United States and different states, this was USDA's second federal order to try to figure out exactly where this is across the country in the dairy industry. So USDA's goal with that federal order was to try to have some type of structured and type of response to figure out the testing strategy, but they did not have specific requirements for each state. So each state had the ability to work with their dairy division, whoever was in charge of already testing milk for different things to figure out how that would work in the state. USDA did pay for that testing, but they just required the state to develop a plan, submit it to USDA, and then keep track of the type of testing that's being done and be able to provide that so we knew that surveillance was happening. And I just want to mention, hopefully you're aware, there was a previous federal order in April by USDA last year that required that it was mandatory for all lactating dairy cattle that are crossing state lines to have a negative milk test within 7 days, unless they're going directly to slaughter. So that federal order was still in place, and this was an additional federal order on top of that one. And a little bit more background, just so everybody's aware, USDA issued that federal order to try to figure out again where we're still finding virus in milk. We have had dairies across different states that had absolutely no signs of this disease, but we could still find that virus in milk. And the impact on the poultry farms was pretty dramatic. So because that we were seeing this spread from dairy farms to poultry farms, that was one of the main reasons this federal order went into place, as the poultry industry wanted to know exactly where this virus was and try to determine the risk in different states. There's a lot of virus in the milk on these farms, and it doesn't take much to impact the poultry industry. So again, the main reason behind this was not because it's a public health risk, as pasteurization destroys this virus, but because of the impact on the poultry industry. So the good news, as far as the state of Kansas, we started this in January doing silo testing. So we worked with our dairy division to collect, when they're already out collecting milk samples at silo, to collect these samples. And we kept track of that to make sure that we had reached every single dairy in Kansas. USDA required us to have 4 months of testing, having all negative results before we could submit our request to try to reach what I call gold status, because we're gold on the map, but an unaffected status. And through silo testing, we were able to reach almost all of our dairies in Kansas. There were a few that we did not pick up on silo testing. So we were required to test those at least once at the bulk tank level at the farm and show that every single dairy in Kansas since January had been tested at least once, and about 80% of our dairies were tested frequently at the silo level. So if you're wondering, this is the map that's on USDA's website. We submitted the request in May to get the gold status or the unaffected state status. So this is now available on the map. The goal with this, hopefully, right now, both federal orders are still in place. So we're having to continue to do silo testing on a monthly time basis. And the federal order requiring movement of lactating dairy cattle across state lines having a negative test is still in place. But hopefully, as more states reach that gold status, there might be a chance that those federal orders or those movement restrictions might change, and that would be the goal of this. So with that, Jake, that's the update I have on the National Milk Testing Strategy Program.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. McReynolds. With that, we'll open it up for questions. If anybody's got a question for Dr. McReynolds, like I said, feel free to unmute your line and ask directly, or you're welcome to type something in the chat box, and I'm happy to relay that over for you. Not seeing anything. If there's no questions, we'll continue on. If you think of something later, feel free to shoot me an email. I will share my contact information at the end of the meeting, and would be happy to get you in contact with Dr. McReynolds if you've got questions about milk testing. With that, we'll move on to our second speaker, Dr. Justin Smith. Justin's going to give us a really, really in-depth update here on New World screwworm. So, Dr. Smith, we appreciate you being here with us today, and the floor is yours.
Well, excellent. Thanks, Jake. And well, I'm trying to get, I don't know, can you see this? You can still see the slide, right?
We can still see the light. Yep, there you go. Now you're on your first slide.
Cool. All right. No, thanks everybody for the opportunity. So yeah, my subject's not quite as appetizing as Dr. McReynolds, but we'll try to keep the gory details and the gory pictures down to a minimum. But I did want to take an opportunity to make sure that everybody is aware of New World screwworm. We're going to talk a little bit about maybe some of the history about what it is and why we're concerned about it, but more importantly about what some of our concerns and about why some of our response plans if we happen to get impacted with it. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So for those folks that don't know, New World screwworm is actually a larva or maggot of the New World screwworm fly. And I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that name, but anyway, it is a specific fly. It's a tropical fly. What makes them unique is that it's not so much the fly that's the issue, it's the maggot itself, or the larva itself has a predilection for living tissue. So it will burrow into a living tissue and continue to burrow until it actually kills the animal or is stopped. Different than our local maggots or our domestic maggots that we have here that only feed on dead tissue. So that's what makes this significant, and that's what makes this so debilitating to these animals. So these female eggs or these female fly will go around and they have a huge capability of tracing out small scents of blood, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it. So they'll go around to these areas that is conducive to their eggs being able to propagate, such as wounds, mucous membranes, the moist areas on the animal, the umbilicus on small calves, but even down to the level of a small tick bite. So if that tick bite does have some blood release, that is a huge enticement for these flies. So those flies will lay those eggs there. As the larvae hatch out, they will continue to burrow into that tissue. There is an opportunity that, we'll obviously get multiple fly infestations. Our domestic flies, bot flies that may lay larvae in there as well. But at the same time, we will have these these numeral screwworm flies is there as well. We'll talk a little bit about the distinguishing parts of those. If there's any silver lining to this, that there's no contagious opportunity from animal to animal, meaning that an animal can't spread it to another animal. It's got to be the fly that actually lays those eggs on that wound. So it's not like it's a spread from contact. So this is just a little bit of the screwworm life cycle. We won't spend a lot of time on this. Just know that, in our area, with our temperature ranges that we have here, we consider the life cycle of that fly somewhere between 21 and 28 days from the time that the eggs are laid back to the point of where they're laying an adult fly. So you can see on this picture, there is times that they're actually laying eggs on an animal, that the eggs hatch, the larvae are on those animals, and then they will drop off, and there's a pupation stage on the ground before that actually adult fly emerges. So again, not a lot to this other than the ones that we're highly concerned about is the time that they're on the animal and the destruction that they cause. And then we'll talk a little bit about the sterile screwworm fly program that's in place and how that's impacting some of the adult flies. So flies themselves are able to travel long distances, namely that 10 to 20 kilometers or somewhere in between that 6 to 12 mile range out there. Again, like I said, they have a huge capability of smelling out and finding, blood areas or susceptible species areas that might have a wound out there. So that is a huge enticement. The other thing is that we do know down in South America, they do travel on the wind. And so, with some of our prevailing winds, that we do know that they can help spread that fly with that. But in all honesty, some of the things that's caused our issues most recently in the last year and a half, as we'll talk about here shortly, is the movement of infested livestock or wildlife. So we know that that's primarily how we're going to see that impact us more than likely is animals that may be infected that we're not aware of, that it's not evident, or even from, in the case of Mexico right now, some illegal movements that are occurring that is continuing to spread the geographical area of this fly. So screwworm is not new to the United States. We've had it in the past. We were able to, through our eradication practices through the late 50s and early 60s or mid 60s, 1960s, we were able to push this fly southward to the United States border. From then, we continued to work through the sterile fly program of continuing to push it off down to where we actually got it down to what we call the Darien Gap in Panama, down there at the connection between South America and Central America. Up until 2023, we've been able to keep it at bay, and it's always been held at that Darien Gap. That's been our barrier in that respect. And so, but there's things that changed in 23 that's allowed it, and we'll talk about it here shortly, but how fast it moved up through Central America and on into Mexico. So this is the current map of where it's found now, and you can see the different timelines that it's moved northward. It obviously moved up there. A lot of this, the speed that it moved has been attributed to the fact that there was a lot of animal movements. There's a lot of illegal animal movements up through that area, and not necessarily the fly expanding its geographical area on its own. Again, this is just another depiction of how it came across, and I realize the print's pretty small, but you can see in July of 2023, they started to see its expansion into Panama, and frankly, overnight, it just overtook the country of Panama, continued to move north up until the November of 2024 was the first detection that was actually in Mexico, moving up from Guatemala. Again, a lot of that movement was attributed to animal movements by people, not necessarily the fly movement on its own. And then we'll continue to see it up through Mexico. The thing that's really caused us concern, so part of this is, you can see on the map, there's that oval circle there. So when it broke the Darien Gap, the primary barrier area, USDA set up a secondary barrier in that peninsula of Temanapec there in Mexico. The goal was to try to establish and continue to push it back. And so at that point in time, all of the sterile fly release that was happening in Central America and South America was all relocated up into that secondary barrier in an effort to try to make a stronghold there. It's done a fairly decent job. We haven't seen a huge progression on that, but we've had isolated cases. The one that's most recently was this new case in July of 08, or July 8th of this year, I guess, sorry, that frankly was quite a bit north. That was up in Veracruz, Mexico, beyond the secondary barrier. That is what stimulated the U.S. to re-shut down the border of cattle and horses that come across our Mexican-United States border, and does cause us a lot of concern because, frankly, it's within 370 miles of the U.S. border, and frankly, 120 or 160 miles north of that sterile fly dispersal area. So they have relocated some fly dispersal up into that area. But we'll talk about here shortly. We're extending and we're beyond our capacity to increase sterile fly dispersal just based on production limitations. So we've talked a little bit about that sterile fly production. It is a proven tool, as we talked about early on in the 60s. That's what helped us move the fly out of the United States in the first place. So long story short is this a facility in Panama? It's the only facility that we have. It's called the Cope plant. That's the only facility available to sterilize these flies. So basically what they do is they gamma radiate the pupa to make a sterile male. And why that's significant is that the New World screwworm fly mates once in its lifetime, or the female does. And so if we can saturate the area with those sterile flies, we have the ability to have these females produce sterile eggs and frankly, eradicate that fly just based on the fact that they don't have the young larva that's pushing out there. So that decreases the impact on our livestock world, as well as it helps us eliminate this fly from our region. So that's going on today. We continue to do that. Like I said, all of those dispersals at this point in time have been directed to Mexico. There's some things to expand our capacity, but right now that plant is producing at its maximum. And that maximum is about 112 million flies per week. We're able to release about 100 million of those flies in any 1 week because they got to maintain a breeding colony there every week to keep this propagation going on. As well, we provided some funds, and I say USDA has provided some funds to Mexico to retrofit a production facility in Mexico that was actually used for fruit fly development, but now they're going to extend that out into the New World screwworm fly. That's being done the way I've understood it, but it's going to be probably the end of the year before it's up and running. It'll have the ability to produce another 60 million, which is obviously not enough flies yet if we happen to get it in the United States. The reason they picked that narrowing into Mexico was just geographically because frankly, if it gets much farther north in large numbers, there's just too much land mass there to have sterile flies be effective overall. We will definitely use them as targeted response. And then if we happen to get in the United States, I foresee that all of the production will be transferred to the United States, or all of I shouldn't say production, all of the releases will be pushed to the United States in an effort to keep it at the border. So some of the treatments that's out there that we have, and this is where, from a veterinary component, I've got a lot of concern out there. So we have some topicals that are produced by or approved by EPA that are out there. My understanding is the Catron 4 you see at the top is kind of the go-to, particularly in Mexico and in Central America. That's what they're using for the topical spray on some of these wounds in an effort to try to make sure they don't continue to move that larva around. The unfortunate thing is that spray's been on back order for an extended period of time, and I don't, from what I've understood from the manufacturer, they're working to keep up, but they don't have the ability to keep up. The other thing is we do have some systemic products now that we didn't have back in the 50s and 60s, namely the macrocyclic lactones. A lot of you folks may recognize Dectomax or Dormectin, Ivomec. There's some others out there that are not effective to the New World screwworm, and we got to recognize that so that we're not using the wrong product in that case. Again, the word that I'm getting out of Mexico is that the shortage of these products has gotten so high that the price of them has put them out of reach of the producers, and so many of the producers can't afford to even use these products. Again, if we get that in the United States, I can see that demand is just increasing exponentially. So I do have a lot of concerns in this way. The other thing that's out there is none of these products are actually approved other than the Catron. It's my understanding none of these are approved for New World screwworm in the United States. With that said, the pharmaceuticals like the Dormectin, Dectomex, and all that, veterinarians do have the right to write a prescription for extra label use, but the pesticides, we don't have that right. We don't have the authority to do that through the EPA component of it. So again, them are some of the things that as a state regulator, as a veterinarian, we're working on really hard in an effort to try to fast track some approvals. But this is just one of those limitations that we do have some concern about. So this is again, just kind of a slide to outline some of those preparedness gaps. We're talking today, and I say today, Kansas is talking with all of our neighboring states as well as USDA. What movement requirements will be. We want to make sure that business continuity can happen, but at the same time, what do we need to have in place to assure us that Kansas livestock may not be subjected to it, particularly if the state of Texas gets it, which we all recognize is probably going to be the first place that we're going to see it once it gets into Kansas or gets into the United States. But likewise, what happens if it gets in Kansas, and what requirements are we going to put on our own facilities to at least make sure that other states are comfortable with receiving Kansas livestock? But more importantly, how other production systems are comfortable in receiving livestock that may come from an infected area. The treatment strategies, when we require these strategies to be taken care of in an infected area, who's responsible for doing it? Where's that money coming from to support those products, buying those products? And then, what responsibilities on the producers to make sure that it's being done in a timely manner. We've already talked about the sterile fly production, the shortages, the fact that we may be USDA just, I think it was 21 million they give. I may have the dollar amount right, but anyway, they're retrofitting a plant in Texas as we speak that will be a dispersal site. And that won't be a production site, but will be a dispersal. So the goal is to move some of those pupae up to Texas, have them flies develop there so that they're ready for our dispersal and be able to release them as soon as we see it coming closer. The geographical limitations, we can only fly those flies so far from that production site and still maintain the viability of those flies. So there is some definite limitations there. And then I think the other one that we have to be aware of is that the New World screwworm is a warm-blooded fly. That fly looks at any warm-blooded. So any warm-blooded animal out there or human out there is susceptible to it from them wounds. Pets and humans are come across the border, but they're not under the same level of inspection scrutiny that our livestock would be if we were starting to move animals across the border with that. So we do have some concerns about the opportunity for humans and pets to be that, but as well as the wildlife. How does wildlife that's crossing back and forth have the opportunity to propagate this? And then if it happens to get in the United States, continuing to spread the opportunity through our wildlife, whether it be feral pigs, deer out there. Just as a case in point, I mean, the last time we seen it in the United States was in 2016, and it happened to be on the Key Islands down in the peninsula of Florida, which was the best place to have it if we were going to have it, just because of the exposure opportunity was very limited, but it was in the deer population down there. So it definitely can happen. And I promised I wouldn't put a lot of gross pictures out there, but I just wanted to make people aware. This was an article that was actually in Canada back in April of this year. And a person was flying from the Dominican Republic, if I remember right, landed in Canada, had a wound, and when they went in to look at it, it actually was infected with screwworm. So again, only to say that in the fact of we do have some concerns, and there is some vulnerability in the fact of humans being able to carry this that don't have. I think the last report I had, there was actually 30 deaths associated in humans in Central and South America associated to screwworm since it started to move. So it's definitely a concern out there. So with that, Jake, that's all I've got, but happy to address any questions as fit.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Dr. Smith. Appreciate that very much. Very timely too, right after lunch. That's exactly what we want to talk about is these screwworms. But it is a super important topic that we need to keep an eye on across the state, across all species. So appreciate you addressing this and its relevancy to Kansas and where we're at so far. Again, if anybody's got questions, feel free to unmute your line and ask Dr. Smith directly, or you can type something into the chat box, and I'm happy to relay that over to him for you. We'll give it just a couple, we'll give it a minute or so here. Well, not seeing anything.
While we're waiting there, Jake, one thing I would convey, and just because of the nature of our audience here is that, the movement of neonatal dairy calves is a huge concern and something that we know that those calves have to move off of these large dairies because of the just-in-time movement. And so how do we do that calves that still have wet navels? How do we do that with calves that still might be tainted with placental fluid or blood in that respect? And so that's one of the things that we're talking amongst states as well as our New World Screwworm specialist in an effort to try to do that. The navel is a huge concern, and the horror stories I'm hearing out of Mexico is that that's what their biggest problem is at this point in time is during calving season, these young calves are just getting ate up by these flies and larvae.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. Well, if anybody thinks of anything later, either while we're still on the call or after, again, feel free to shoot me an email and I will relay that over to Dr. Smith and we'll put you guys in contact. But thank you again, Dr. Smith, for your information and your update there on New World Screwworm. We appreciate your time this afternoon.
Excellent. Thank you. Take care.
You're welcome. With that, we will move along in our agenda. We've got Miss Janet Bailey with Kansas Dairy Association, Dairy Commission. So, Janet, thank you for being with us again today. And I'm going to hand it over to you for a state of the state address from your viewpoint.
So again, I just want to convey the appreciation on behalf of dairy producers to Dr. McReynolds and Dr. Smith as we have had to navigate times through H5N1. One of the concerns that we have had, aside from keeping the dairy population safe and not transmitting disease, is being able to open back up movement without some of those restrictions and expenses that producers were facing. And we remain hopeful as well that we can get the gold standard for those states in the upper Midwest as well, and that we might be able to see cattle move across some of the state lines without the additional testing that is required. I know for individuals right now who are having to move cattle, if they've got to go across the state line, they're still having to do testing, and that is not only an expense, but timing has to be far more precise to get those samples to a diagnostic lab, those results back, and we are looking forward to the day when we can put that chapter behind us. Additionally, I would share that many dairy organizations in the Western United States are encouraging the development of a vaccine. We recognize H5N1 has had different iterations. It is a moving target, but with that, it's going to be helpful that we have a vaccine for when such time as though that would be approved, so that we could mitigate the effects. So just looking forward to that time, looking in the future, recognizing that we do have a poultry industry as well that would welcome the ability for us to be able to take those steps when that's available. So thanks to the department and to Animal Health for working through a lot of those details. Regarding New World Screwworm, I think that is certainly an area people are interested in thinking about our next steps. Once it got within less than 400 miles of the U.S. border so quickly. It has caused our industry partners to encourage that we ramp up production of those flies, those sterile flies, and perhaps even find a way to increase that production. And we will certainly be on board to try to ensure that we have what medications may be needed, both here and abroad, to try to slow down the spread. So thank you for the information today, Dr. Smith, and we will continue to be plugged in on that. Jake gave me the opportunity to share just a couple pieces of what is coming up for the dairy industry and some of the advocacy pieces and consumer outreach. And so I appreciate him doing so. Again, this is something that the Dairy Association and the Dairy Commission do in partnership as we look toward the Kansas State Fair. There are a couple things that happen that are big touch points with the consuming public and with people in terms of agricultural education. Kansas Dairy, along with several other partners, work together with AgriLand at the Kansas State Fair in the Pride of Kansas building. That's something that our partner, Midwest Dairy, takes the lead on, and we support. We appreciate them taking the lead to have volunteers on our day, but we have many other partners, whether it's beef, wheat, conservation messages. Those things are very important for a consuming public to touch base on. So that will be coming up. State Fair is approaching quickly. The other very popular piece that I would just remind folks that we are a part of is the dairy parlor that is adjacent to the Prairie Pavilion, or right next to, I guess, the Prairie Pavilion at the Kansas State Fair. And that parlor is made possible by the Dairy Farmers of Kansas through their support of the commission, as well as Southwest Dairy Farmers, one of our checkoff partners. And that parlor is one of the popular places people can go for a demonstration. Through the support of Kansas Dairy Commission and Highland, we are able to provide coupons for ice cream to classrooms and homeschool friends who go through and watch the demonstrations. That's been a valuable way for us to connect the dots for people, and again, a way for people to understand more about dairy production. So those activities will be here before we know it. And I just wanted to, again, convey our appreciation to the partners, not just us, but others, including the Kansas State Fair, who make that possible. As we look toward a couple priority areas for Kansas Dairy, we will continue to work with our partners in workforce pipelines on the commission side, and on the association side, some of our workforce challenges that we face. Again, we don't do that alone. We're part of a much bigger picture, and it is with great gratitude that we have that opportunity. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the continued effort that the Kansas Dairy Association has and that the commission has in set aside funds as we look toward the need for a new dairy at Kansas State University. That 50-year-old facility, as we say, you can only weld on top of old welds so many times, and we are there. But I think when we look at the modern needs for production, agriculture, and what a modern dairy looks like, and we recognize what we need to do to prepare tomorrow's veterinarians and the research that we need, we know that it is beyond time for that facility to gain approval and for it to be built. So that is certainly a focus of our leadership. And again, we've got friends on this call who have adopted policy who support that as well. So Jake, I thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. I thank you for the partnership of the department with our industry, and look forward to continuing a dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for all that, Jan. And I know we're all looking forward to State Fair. Like you said, it's right around the corner. It'll be here before we know it. So very excited to see a very strong continued dairy presence at the State Fair across all aspects of the industry. So thank you for your time and commitment to Kansas Dairy, and we appreciate all that you do in your position.
Thanks, Jake.
With that, we are going to open it up here and just see if anybody on the call has anything that they would like to talk about that we maybe didn't address today, whether that be milk testing or New World screwworm, anything that Janet's mentioned. So we'll kind of open up the floor for a minute or two here and see if anybody's got anything. Again, chat box is open. You're welcome to throw something in there, and I can certainly relay that and we'll open it up. But yeah, we'll give it a second here.
Yeah, Jake, this is Linda Foster. Can you hear me?
I sure can, Linda. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, with what Dr. Smith told us about the screwworm was I've heard about it, but I really didn't know much about it, so I really appreciate his report. My concern is this particular day, I see there's not very many dairy farmers actually on this call at the moment or the Zoom meeting, because a lot of them I'm sure are in the field. The crazy weather we've had, we just got started in the hayfield not that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we get this information, like the set of slides maybe he just had, and get them sent out to all the dairy farmers on, that are getting like our Kansas Dairy newsletter and stuff, so that they're more aware of it? And I thought the explanation he had and those maps he showed was really eye-opening to how serious this condition might really be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's a really great question, Linda. I'm more than happy to reach out to Dr. Smith once this is over. I think he's still on the call. But see if we can get a copy of those slides. And then I think the best way to do that, because you, along with the other producers across the state, are used to seeing the newsletter that comes through from Kansas Dairy. We'll see if we can get that shared over with Janet and see if we can get that to be a part of the next newsletter that goes out. We will also, the call today and the session is being recorded. And so what we'll do after this is we will actually share this on our Kansas Department of Agriculture's Ag Summit webpage. And so it'll be archived on there for people to go back and listen through. But as well as I do, some people would prefer to follow along at their own pace, which is just fine. So we'll see if we can get it out there in a couple different ways, one being archived on our website and the other being shared through the Kansas Dairy communication platforms. But I think that's a really great question.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions from any of our folks joining us today? Okay, if not, I'm going to share in the chat box, and if you guys are joining just via phone, I'm not sure if you'll see that, but I'm going to send a follow-up email with some information based off of the conversations we had today. But one thing I want to share before I forget is an invitation to this year's 2025 Ag Growth Summit. And so that's actually going to be held here in Manhattan at the Alumni Center. You can see the address on the screen. The Ag Growth Summit is scheduled for August 14th, so we're just shy of 2 weeks out. It's 2 weeks from yesterday, so August 14th. The website that is linked in the chat box includes a registration link as well as the agenda that is up to date and current, so it'll actually see who all of our guest speakers are. We'll have a welcoming address from Secretary of Agriculture Mike Beam, as well as Governor Kelly, so we're excited to have her here in Manhattan to address the group. We are going to offer 3 breakout sessions this year, so our breakout session topics will include innovation and technology in production agriculture, animal agriculture and proteins, as well as specialty and value-added emerging markets. And so there'll be 3 different rooms, 2 breakout sessions. So if you're here and you're able to join us in person, you'll be able to sit through 2 of those 3 sessions if you'd like. And then we'll wrap everything back up at the end of the day with a really exciting update from the American Royal, as well as some closing comments from Secretary Beam again. So want to make sure we send that out there, let you guys know that you are invited. Today is the last day to register for the Ag Growth Summit. So if you have not already registered, I'd encourage you to do that. My follow-up email will include a link to the website that will have the registration link available. Registering, it is a free event to come. So if you forget or don't happen to register in time, that's fine. We would love to have you here. Registration just allows us to know for a meal head count. It will include a lunch for those that register by the end of the day today. And then we are closing it out a little bit different from years prior with a social. So following the agenda, we'll have a social with heavy hors d'oeuvres and some drinks, special or focusing on or highlighting some Kansas wines. So we're excited to offer that to the participants. But we would love to see you guys here on August 14th. Again, want to thank everybody for being here with us today, taking time out of your busy schedule. Like Linda had mentioned, we've got a lot going on across the state, across all industries. So I appreciate you guys taking time and joining us today. Thank you, Dr. McReynolds and Dr. Smith, Janet, for your guys' insight and your expertise. Absolutely appreciate what you guys have to offer for us and appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to join us again today. With that, we'll go ahead and close out, but appreciate everybody's time. And as always, feel free to reach out to us if you guys have any questions. My email is just jake.renner@chaos.gov, and I'm always happy to answer any questions you guys have. With that, we'll give you guys back the rest of your day.